Congressional Democrats flexing their new power tonight and warning of a Saturday night massacre, making a bold and in-your-face move to protect the Mueller probe and demanding an emergency hearing on Sessions' replacement, Matthew Whitaker. Now, the incoming chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jerry Nadler, joins me in a moment. What he's been asking for is that Whitaker should recuse, saying it's, quote, wholly inappropriate for him to oversee Mueller because he has this well-documented hostility, putting the investigation at grave risk. Two sources also close to Whitaker tell the Washington Post he has no intention of doing that. Nadler and Democratic leaders sending another letter to officials demanding they preserve the key documents that are relevant to Mueller and the firing of Sessions. And you can see there on your screen a lot of different officials put on notice. They say, we remind you, concealing, removing, or destroying the documents itself could constitute a crime. Congressman Nadler, thank you for joining me tonight. You're in the middle of it. You're not waiting. Why did you come out swinging and put so many officials on notice? And what happens if he does not recuse, Mr. Whitaker?
Well, we came out right away because the president is creating a constitutional crisis. That's a moment of peril for our country. His actions fit a clear pattern of interference and attempting of sabotage of the special counsel's investigation. And we think it's very important that the president be put on notice that he is not above the law, and the American people will not tolerate his trying to act like a tyrant and a monarch, not like a president.
This was what the president said about you and your colleagues' investigations yesterday.
They want to do things. You know, I keep hearing about investigations. They can play that game, but we can play it better. Because we have a thing called the United States Senate. They can look at us, and then we can look at them, and it'll go back and forth, and it'll probably be very good for me politically.
Do you view that as a threat to use the Senate to investigate you, your team, your staff?
Well, that's a threat to use the Senate to interfere with the operations of the House. I mean, they can investigate anything they want. They're not going to find anything. But the fact is that this is the president trying to abuse his power to prevent, not investigations, but to prevent Congress from doing its constitutional duty of being a check and a balance on the administration and of holding the president and the administration accountable. That is our constitutional duty. The Republicans who are in charge of the House and the Senate have been derelict, either silent or complicit in the face of administration actions to sabotage the special prosecutor, and they've been derelict by not doing their duty. We are going to do our constitutional duty. If the president thinks that's intolerable, well, the American people, I think, are going to tell him that he is not above the law and that he can't act that way.
Congressman, as we're speaking here in your native New York, as you may have heard, but it's brand new, 6:26 p.m. on the East Coast, we're watching a fairly sizable procession of what are being called Protect Mueller protests. They've been peaceful up to this point, working their way down Times Square. And I wonder, what is your message to those protesters when people say they'll be ready to take to the streets when a red line is crossed? In your view, how would we know when or if Mr. Whitaker crosses such a line?
Well, Mr. Whitaker crosses the line the moment he accepts the job and doesn't recuse himself. And we know he's not going to recuse himself because the only reason he was appointed was to sabotage the investigation. And we know that because the president's only criticism, which he expressed for months of Attorney General Sessions, was that he did recuse himself and he didn't sabotage the investigation. He had no other criticisms of him. So the president obviously was not going to appoint someone who would repeat Sessions' sin of not recusing himself. He put Whitaker there because Whitaker has expressed extreme hostility to the investigation, because he has prejudged the issue, and because he obviously is prepared to do what the president wants, which is to subvert the investigation. I will tell you that if Mr. Whitaker does this, and for that matter, the president's attempts, these are all further evidence of a conspiracy to obstruct justice.
Strong words. I also want to ask you, while I have you, given your mandate with the Judiciary Committee and given another mass shooting today in America, in your committee or with Speaker Pelosi, if she becomes Speaker, do you want to see gun control legislation as a Democratic priority, or is that not on the top of the to-do list?
Well, I can only speak for myself at the moment, but I think that's one of our priorities. And in fact, I'm sure it'll be one of our priorities. It won't be the only priority, but it'll be a priority for soon enough. It is. We're seeing these mass murders increasingly frequently, and only in the United States. Only in the United States. When you look at the number of victims of gun violence, in Great Britain, in England, in Japan, it's under 100 or it's 150. Here it's 33,000. Our people are not 10,000 times as mentally ill as people in Western Europe or in Japan, and we must have reasonable regulations. We don't want to take people's guns away, but military-style assault rifles ought not to be in civilian hands. We ought to have proper background checks. Those are very moderate steps, and the House, I'm sure, will take them.
Congressman Jerry Nadler, on a range of big issues tonight, and you're busy with the committee and your work already underway. I appreciate you making time for us on The Beat. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.